The Italian Renaissance is generally held to be the period around 1400 to 1600, when artists, scholars, and creative people of all kinds felt that they were rediscovering the principles of Roman antiquity. During the Renaissance, drawing became a much more important aspect of an artist's creative process. Paper had become cheaper, partly as a result of the book printing revolution of the mid-15th century, and artists could use it wastefully in a more experimental manner. New drawing materials such as chalks came in that allowed artists to work in a more expressive, more varied way, and so during the Renaissance, drawing becomes central to every artist's creative process. The first stage of the artist's process was the sketch, where he got down on paper first ideas that had maybe formed in his head about the rough layout of a composition. A good example is this drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, a study of the Madonna and Child with the Infant Baptist, where you can see how Leonardo has roughed out the shape of the Madonna's body with long sweeping strokes for her arms and legs. He's drawn her head in two different positions, looking down to the left or to right, so she can gaze either at the infant Christ at her breast or at the infant Baptist to the other side. He's sketched in, very roughly, a distant landscape with water and mountains, and then he's surrounded that rough sketch with numerous other heads, including lions and a dragon, simply because the paper was available for him. This sort of study is a really good example of what in the Renaissance an artist would do right at the start of a composition. Once the artist had devised the composition to his satisfaction in a sketch, he would then arrange living figures in the poses of the figures in the composition so that he could study their proportions, their movements, their interactions. This drawing by Raphael is a study for the tapestry cartoon of Christ's charge to Peter. Shows an assemblage of what we presume were Raphael's workshop assistants, simply wearing their everyday workman's clothing. Artists almost always used male models, even when they were studying a figure that was to be female in the finished project. Raphael was one of the few artists of the period to use a female model, and here in this composition study for the Three Graces, he's arranged a single female model in 3 consecutive poses to make a drawing, rather than 3 models posed together as in the previous drawing. The artist would then go on to make individual drapery studies for the clothing of each figure in the composition. Often he would do this by taking a small wooden model, draping that model with pieces of cloth, and the artist could then take his time to make a study of the fall of light and shade on the drapery of that small model. This is what we see Leonardo da Vinci doing in this drawing, a study for the drapery of the angel in the Virgin of the Rocks. He's drawn it with black ink using a brush and white heightening to capture the wonderful sense of light and shade as it falls across the drapery of this figure. For the Renaissance artist, it was important to have a sense of variety and lifelikeness in the figures that they were painting. And for that reason, artists would usually make an individual head study for every figure in the painting. This drawing by Federico Barocci, a study for the head of the Virgin in a painting of the Annunciation, is a very good example of this. You can see that Barocci has taken this beautiful model to capture a sense of lifelikeness in the features and how the light falls across her face. The final stage of the design process was where the artist brought together all the individual studies into a single full-scale design called a cartoon, from the Italian cartone, a large sheet of paper. This would be used to transfer the design onto the painting surface, either by pricking holes or scoring around the outlines. All the design elements that the artist had prepared before are together in this one large drawing. This cartoon by Bernardino Campi is preparatory for an altarpiece in a provincial church in Italy. It's a study of the Virgin and Child on a sheet of paper about a metre high. The cartoons are often discarded afterwards, and so this is a rare survival. The end product of this creative process could be a painting, such as a devotional work or an altarpiece, maybe a fresco on a wall, maybe even a tapestry or a print. The important point is that the drawings were just an artist's tools, just part of the workshop process of creating that finished work. And Renaissance artists would have been very surprised that we now treat drawings such as these as works of art. Without these drawings, we'd simply see the final product and have no idea how an artist arrived at that. The very few drawings were made as finished works of art in their own right. This drawing by an unidentified provincial Italian artist of around 1500 was commissioned as a record of a miracle. A young girl had fallen down in a fright, maybe a fit of some kind, and she was revived by an appearance of Beata Camilla, a local saint. And her mother commissioned this devotional work in commemoration of this miracle. It shows signs of having been displayed in public, and it's a very rare survival. Quite by contrast is Michelangelo's Bacchanal of Children, which was drawn by him in 1533 as a gift for the young Roman nobleman Tommaso di Cavalieri, with whom Michelangelo had fallen in love the previous year. It's technically the most accomplished drawing that I know, done with a sharpened piece of red chalk, essentially stippled onto the surface rather than in broad strokes, so that Michelangelo builds up the modelling of each figure with these tiny dots of red chalk. He sustains this from one side of the sheet to the other, and because the drawing is in perfect condition, you can see every touch of the artist's hand. I don't know of any drawing that's as technically accomplished as this. Because most Italian Renaissance drawings were essentially working studies, their survival was down to chance, and only a tiny proportion of the drawings that must have been made have survived to the present day. The Royal Collection today holds one of the world's greatest collection of Renaissance drawings. They can now be seen by public in loans and exhibitions, and their importance as testimony of an artist's work during the Renaissance can be fully appreciated.